Hello there. Today I'm in Kent in southeast England, a place called Appledore, and behind me are the vineyards of Gusbourne Estate. The wine I have here, one of their sparkling wines, this is Gusbourne Brut Reserve Late Disgorged, and this is from the 2015 vintage. Gusbourne are one of a number of high-profile producers of high-quality English sparkling wine. Somebody called Andrew Weber began planting vines on the estate here in 2004. Andrew's first career had been as a surgeon working in South Africa, but evidently he moved to the UK and started visiting the Kent area because his daughter lived locally. He was obviously interested in the developing market for English wine, and having fallen in love with the area, this led him to purchase 196 hectares of farmland, upon which he planted the vines that you can see behind me. Starting in 2004, he gradually planted over 5 years, 4 hectares a year, until he had 20 hectares of vines here. The first vintage made here was 2006, and when those wines were released in 2010, they received some really good critical acclaim. And as I say, Gusbourne have built up quite a reputation for producing high-quality English sparkling wines. Currently, they have 90 hectares of vineyards in production. 60 here in Kent surrounding the winery, and 30 at a site that neighbours the Goodwood Estate in West Sussex. They've had a slight change of approach, and in future they're going to be concentrating much more on the estate here in Kent, where there is room for further planting should they wish to. But given the fact that some of these are wines that are aged for quite a long time, the wines that they're selling will continue containing fruit from the Sussex vineyards for several years yet. As well as sparkling wines, they do also produce a small amount of varietal still wines here from Chardonnay, Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier. However, volumes of those vary every year, as it can be difficult to get sufficient ripeness into the fruit to make a good still wine. But generally, still wine makes up no more than about 5 or 6% of the total production. The approach here is to make only single vintage wines. There's no use of reserve wines or blending of vintages. They only make wines from their own fruit. They don't buy in any fruit. They don't make wines for anybody else. All the fruit is hand-picked, and all the winemaking is done here on site at the winery in Appledore in Kent. Soils here are fairly heavy soils. It's a clay, but under that clay there's sand, so you get a combination of soils that have a good water holding capacity, preventing drought from affecting the vines, but yet at the same time are well enough drained that they don't generally waterlog. You'll tend to find that vines growing on clay soils produce fruit that gives quite rich flavours to a wine, and the approach they use at Gusbourne goes on to emphasise that. Although the vines that they've planted, the varieties used in Champagne, they've actually chosen for Chardonnay and Pinot Noir to pick Burgundian clones of those that will be lower yielding and will give richer and more concentrated flavours to the wine. On top of that, they will put a portion of most wines through fermentation in barrel, and they tended to opt for some quite long yeast aging styles, all of which are elements that will add extra roundness, richness and complexity to a wine. So the Late Disgorged Brut Reserve is a blend of predominantly Chardonnay, about 63%, and 37% Pinot Noir. The wine has spent 6.5 years aging with its yeast lees in the bottle after its second fermentation, hopefully all helping to give richness and roundness to the style of the wine as that yeast breaks down in the bottle, imparting proteins and sugars. Also helping to fix a really fine bead of small bubbles. Being from 2015, this wine will include wine from the vineyards here in Kent, but also those in Sussex. And a portion of the fruit in this wine, probably about 15%, aged in oak, predominantly old oak, but a tiny proportion of that might have been new. Prior to its second fermentation, the wine would have undergone 100% of malolactic conversion, and it was given a dosage that brought it up to 8.2 grams per litre of sugar. So let's take a quick look at it, shall we? Firstly, the colour. It's a lovely medium to deep, almost sort of golden yellow. There is still a very fine bead rising slowly from the middle of the glass there. The aromas are wonderfully yeasty. There's a toasty brioche note. They're quite powerful aromas. They've got a lovely rich warmth to them, almost a sort of a honeyed hint, perhaps toffee apple, that sort of thing. But the underlying fruit character is one of rich, ripe red apple. It's a lovely combination actually between that sort of red apple and the toasty, yeasty notes. So let's have a taste. There's a richness and a broadness to that lovely red apple fruit on the palate. And yet at the same time, there's almost a sort of a green apple sharpness coming through. Maybe just the slightest hint of malic tartness, a slightly green acidity. Although generally I would say it was more lively than tart. On the mid palate, on the back of my tongue, there is that sort of brioche warmth coming through from the yeastiness. There's a lovely smooth, rich texture. And the fine bubbles are helping to support that sort of lively, appley fruit, allowing it to continue on to what is quite a long finish. There's perhaps the slightest hint of salinity there, but in general, actually, there's a lovely fruit freshness continuing right the way through the wine. I think this is an absolutely exceptional wine. I think it would be fabulous with food. I think you could serve this with things like a pork belly or something like that, and its acidity would be such that it would cut through, and yet it's got sufficient body to actually play against the flavours of the meat. I certainly wouldn't be worried about keeping this in the cellar for another 2-3 years, as it will build some extra tertiary complexity during that period. At the same time, actually, I think the impetus to drink it is so great that would be very difficult to do. I took a look at the Wine Searcher aggregated critics score for this, and it's given a rating of 92 out of 100. Personally, I would be slightly more generous, probably give it a 93. This is a high quality, complex, long-lasting, intense wine that is very well made. I mean, I can still taste the flavours now, and there's a lovely freshness and intensity of flavour remaining in my mouth. So thank you so much for watching this tasting. If you've enjoyed it, please press the like button. If you'd like to watch more, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. And also, if you do that, please set yourself an alert so you can be notified every time I publish a new tasting. That way you won't miss anything. If you have any feedback, please pop that in the comments box below. I'd love to know what you think about the wines I'm looking at, the tastings I'm doing, or anything else that relates to that. If you have any friends you think might like to watch the video, do please pass it on to them. I'd really appreciate that. Thank you again for watching, and I do hope you'll make some time, come and join me for another tasting in the very near future. Till then, bye for now.